Welcome back to the program, Psychophants. That's right, I have got the big gun out. The Mac Daddy of the collection. 1988 Porsche 911 Turbo, the 930. This is the granddaddy of all 911 turbos, man. It doesn't get any better than this. This is where it all started back in the 70s. This is the car you wanted to have with the Countach and the Testarossa in the 70s and 80s. These were the three big ones. And all the 911 turbos that have followed, they still have their roots, their DNA with this car. I still think it's the best one they ever made just because none of the other cars that followed it look quite like this one. They don't have the ostentatiousness. They don't have those big wide flared fenders that just hug the body around the wheels, front and back. They don't have the whale tail. It's just a special look, man. So 70s, so 80s, and I think that's why a lot of people like these cars. This particular car, I got it in 2003, well before the air-cooled market blew up, thank God, or I wouldn't be able to afford this car. In fact, that's kind of the irony of this whole thing is I own this car, yet I really can't afford this car. If I had to go out and buy this car today, if I didn't already have it, there'd be no way I could afford it. Not a chance. So I was really fortunate. And of course, you know, yeah, there was some calculation to it. If you follow my channel, you'll know that I try to buy it low and get cars that I think have a good chance of holding their value or doing better. So I tried to employ those same tactics with this car, but you just never know how it's going to be. So I haven't been holding out on you. I've been wanting to get this car out to show you. I just haven't had the time to do it. If you've been following the channel, you know we've been doing other things, other projects with other cars, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. I haven't had this car out for 2 or 3 months actually. So it's not, you know, I apologize in advance. This car is not in my Concours level condition that I would like it to be normally. I mean, usually it's in the best condition of all my cars, but I've had it under a cover, especially since, you know, getting the E36 and moving stuff around. It's kind of been put aside for a while, but nonetheless, let me just show you around the car, show you a little bit about it. I'll kind of just walk you through this with the understanding that you have very little understanding about 911 turbos. I know a lot of you out there do, but for those that don't, I'll just try to talk you through it and give you the basics about it. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. So let's get started.
This particular car is a 1988 Turbo Coupe, guards red over a champagne leather interior. Now, the G-bodied 911 turbos, which were the factory internal code 930, they were built from 1975 to 1989, but the USA didn't get the turbo from 80 to 85 due to growing emissions standards. So the overall numbers in the USA are actually relatively small, only about 8,500 cars or so. And that includes the coupes, the Targas, cabriolets, and also slant noses. For its time, the 930 was the most opulent high-end sports car you could really buy. I mean, nothing from Ferrari or Lamborghini came close to this. Climate control, absolutely power everything, full leather, hi-fi stereo, 2 additional seats in the back for when you're in a pinch. Fold the back seats down, you've got loads of inside storage, you got a usable but shallow trunk up front. This was really the first supercar without compromises. You could drive this car every day and yet still outrun just about anything in a straight line or on a 2-lane switchback. So the 930s have a reputation as kind of being widow makers. Some have noticed the back end kind of wanting to snap out on you while you're pulling off the throttle during high-speed cornering, but I've always found the car to be far more forgiving. It's still very tail-heavy. You still have to respect it. And you feel that when you're driving, especially with no power steering to assist you, but with all that weight over the rear axle, it has its benefits, and the benefit is grip. Lots of it. Remember, this predates all the all-wheel drive 911 turbos that would come later. So you've got nothing but back wheels doing the work here. Still, despite that, the bite into the pavement with this car is incredible. Part of the secret to its performance is power to weight. 282 horses doesn't sound like much today when you're talking about 500 horsepower cars, 600 horsepower, Hellcats, Demons. But the 930 weighs 2,950 pounds. It's a featherweight. My Cayman S is considered a modern day scalpel, and it weighs more out of the box than this car. Earlier 930s are even lighter than that. There's just nothing to slow it down. No navigation units, computers, no 10 airbags, anti-lock brakes, sound dampening materials, giant wiring harnesses. They're just not there. So it's really a matter of what kind of horsepower we're talking about. Porsche ponies always feel like Clydesdales to everyone else's geldings. To do 0 to 60 in the mid-5s and almost 160 flat out in the mid-80s was no joke. And Porsche was doing it sometimes with half the power of what other cars needed in order to get the same performance. The engine work in this car includes completely new Molle pistons and cylinders, which were a preventive choice I made at 50,000 miles when they had the engine out. Fab speed headers and exhaust, a B&B intercooler, K27S turbocharger, EVOMS intake, carbon fiber engine shroud, some upgraded wiring, and just a few other knickknacks. I had the engine out for about 4 months in 2005 to address some oil leaks, and as I was taking parts off, I kind of just figured it was easier to put newer and better parts back on. And although original 930s are great, if you find a tastefully modified 930 done to a high standard, don't let that scare you. Once you get used to an extra 150 horses and the loss of turbo lag in this car, it comes alive and just becomes an absolute animal. In some ways, it's a shame that the values of these cars have ballooned, because the only people now who can really enjoy them are the ones who bought in low and early and still have their cars like me. And then you have the ones with more money than brains who can write six-figure checks for these relics of the 70s and 80s to enjoy them. So the average Joe caught in the middle is missing out on these great cars, and it's a shame.
Okay, so now we're on the inside of the 930. So let's talk about the interior and kind of just what are the differences between the earlier model cars and the later model cars. Obviously, this is an 88, so this is a later model car from 75 to 89. Again, they were built. The main differences, and they're 97% identical, but the main differences in the later model cars, which would be 86 plus, is you've got larger HVAC vents here. Okay, you've got 2 in the corners, 2 centrally, and I'm not even sure the earlier model cars had 4. I think they did have 4, but the center vents on the earlier cars are smaller, and the ones on the sides are like just little slits. They're incredibly small. Now, that doesn't mean that the HVAC in the later model cars is much better. In fact, it's still terrible. So if you're looking for an air-cooled 911 with good AC, you're probably not going to find it, because even from the factory, the AC was terrible. So when it runs out of a charge and it kind of just doesn't work anymore, most people don't even bother fixing them, because even when you spend the money to fix them, they don't work very well. This particular car, again, it's champagne full leather interior. The 930s, unlike the Carreras, they got a full leather interior, which meant leather to the belt line. And the belt line is basically up here to where you see the black trim on the doors. That would be the belt line. And you'd think the belt line would be lower, but it's not. It's up to here. So this is champagne leather interior. You could get all kinds of different colors. Sometimes most of the time the dash was black, but sometimes you could get it like this where it was deviated. Some of their standard color options. You could do a special order and get this a different color. You could get these knee bars here. You could get these in the same color as your leather. That was an exclusive option. The center console here is not the standard center console. The one that came with the car it's a much smaller one. It comes up from the floor of the car and it ends about right here. and so you've got all the space behind it. You could pass your hands behind it. This particular one is from the exclusive program of Porsche, and so they had a different type of console you could order. They had 2 or 3. They had like an A, a B, and a C console, and they were not cheap. This particular console with the revised HVAC controls and fans and hazard lights and fog lights and power door lock, I think it was like $1,500, $2,000. This was added after the car was built, so it wasn't. It's a factory option, but it was added later on. Nakamichi head unit. I do have the original. I put this in 10 or 12 years ago. It was the closest thing to stock looking that you could put in at the time. Redid all the speakers. I think I've got Focal speakers in the front and Phoenix Golds in the back, and I have a subwoofer underneath the passenger seat here. The Momo wood wheel and wood shifter are aftermarket. I do have the original wheel and shifter for both. The wheel that came on this car was the same that came on all 80s 911s really, and 944s, everything. It was the 4-spoke wheel which went across like this. It's okay, it's fine, but this was actually, again, this was added before I actually bought the car, so this is the way I got it. Same with the center console. I did the stereo and stuff, but these were just like this when I bought the car. Let's see, what else? You've got your typical 911 gauge cluster here with your 5 analog gauges, which is really, it's probably the most perfect instrument cluster that's ever been made. I mean, it just gives you exactly what you need. It's simple, it's straightforward. You know exactly what you're looking for. There's just no gizmos and stuff to distract you. Everything now is just computers, electronics, and ECUs, and massive wiring harnesses and stuff. And this car just predates all of that. This is a dinosaur. Even though this is a 1988, it's still built on 70s technology, early 70s technology. The first cars came out in 75, but really they were designing those in the early 70s when they were racing the 935s, the 930 race, the early turbocharged race cars. And this car was pretty much a result of that racing technology. This has the 4-speed manual transmission. They all had 4 speeds until 89. 89 was the only year you could get a 930 with the 5-speed and hydraulic clutch. So this is cable actuated clutch. And you have to kind of get used to it when you're driving a 911 because the pedals, they come up from the floor, and so the way you push them down is entirely counter to what you're used to in any other car. Normally the pedals will go down like that because they're coming from the front, but these, they go down like that. And so if you've never driven a rear engine 911, especially an earlier car, an air-cooled car, you're going to have to get used to how the pedals work because they are a little bit different. And like a lot of sports cars at the time, the pedals are shifted this way a little bit towards the center of the car, so they're not straight on with the wheel and the instrument cluster and in the seat too. So you're kind of moving your feet over a little bit. This car also has the sports seats. The sports seats have extra bolstering. The sides down here and on the sides here. These were a no-cost option. You could get these. You could just, in the order guide, if you didn't want the comfort seats, these were a no-cost option on the Turbo. If you wanted these on the 911 Carrera, you had to pay like $600 a piece to upgrade to the Turbo or to the sports seats. I would say only 20%, maybe 30% of the 930s have sports seats. So this is a really good option if you can find it when you're looking for a 930. This car, it's on the inside, it's almost perfect. I mean, there's a little bit of wear on the seats and stuff, but really for 63,000 miles, this thing is looking really good on the inside. I did put new floor mats in it 10 or 12 years ago. And you can't get these particular floor mats anymore. The way they embroidered them with the red outline and the turbo, and they're the exact same on the rear I think they were done by Lloyd's, but I was able to talk to somebody at Lloyd's and talk them into doing them like this. And everybody's asked me, well, where'd you get them? And I said, well, Lloyd's did them. I said, well, they don't do that. I said, well, somehow I talked the guy into doing them for me. So God forbid if I ruin these, I'll just have to get the regular ones again. But you know, this car is, you know, it came with you know, the options that came on it were the sports seats, sunroof. That was a no-cost option. You could get a sunroof delete if you wanted. You get an upgraded hi-fi stereo standard in the turbo. You know, turbo gets almost everything standard, so there really weren't that many options, maybe 7 or 8 options. So this had the sports seats, sunroof no-cost option. These are no-cost option. Limited slip differential, that was an option for about $700. It's got velour trunk carpet up in front. It's like black velour. That was like $100 or so. And I think that's about it. I mean, you couldn't get a whole lot on these cars unless you wanted to go through the exclusive department, special wishes. And then, you know, it was really just a matter of how much you wanted to spend, really. But, you know, if you're just looking for a regular 930, every once in a while you'll see one that's got deviated colored piping around the seats and stuff. You could get that for like $125, but that would again go through the exclusive department. So that wouldn't be in the regular. And if you just walked in the showroom and asked the salesman, he probably wouldn't know it unless he pulled out the much larger order guide for it. So some of the kind of unusual quirks in these cars, again, back then the engineering was really great on them in terms of mechanics, but sometimes the designers kind of just did things on the fly and weren't really thinking about it. So for instance, the power door locks, you can lock them and unlock them here, but you can also do them on the sides here. That's what these little twist knobs are for here, to lock and unlock the doors. So most people don't know what those are, but that's what they are. You've got buttons completely almost hidden down underneath the instrument cluster here. You've got the sunroof mechanism, which is here. I think you've got the rear window wiper here, and there's one more here which toggles the left and right power mirrors. So if you toggle it to the left, the joystick will move this one. If you toggle it to the right, it'll move that one. So, you know, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put buttons there. You know, you wouldn't normally do that, but I think they're just putting these things together and figured, oh shit, we're short 3 places to put buttons, so let's just put them under here. And they do have little labels on them, but you can't read them unless you stick your head underneath the dash. So power seats, you know, I mean, again, everything on the 930 was pretty much the top of the line stuff that Porsche was doing. So you didn't have to add a whole lot to these cars. Power locks, power mirrors, power windows, power seats. Oh, heated, you could get heated seats. This car does not have heated seats. And it came, the 930s came with automatic climate control standard. So this is a little kooky too. You've got your AC up here. You move these toggles to, you know, to define where the air is coming from. And here's your fan, and here's your AC. But if you want your heat is down here. So you've got 0, you got a little dial here, which is like 0 through 10. And this controls the heat. And the reason this little doodad does is because you're getting your heat off your heat exchangers in the back. So, you know, they're just putting these things together and trying to figure it out as they go, I guess. This console, obviously, you've got some CD holders in here and stuff. But again, this wasn't standard. Some of the other center consoles that you could get center consoles with additional gauges. Those are really expensive, $3,000–$4,000. You could get outside temperature gauges. You could get different pressure gauges and stuff. They had several different options that you could spend your money on it and do here in the center console area. The Special Wishes program was pretty much limitless at that time. I mean, if you wanted this to be completely stitched in leather, you could do that. You could, again, get these knee bars in different colors. You could get these stitched completely in leather. You could get the front of the dash here in leather. You could get the instrument dial, these rings, you could get these in silver and aluminum. You could get them to match the leather on your car. You could get the dial faces in different colors. You could even get the speaker rings in leather. You could get the window switches in leather. Yeah, why would you want these in leather? But I've actually seen a couple cars where they're in leather. So it's just a matter of, how much money you wanted to spend back then. These cars originally, this stickered for about $70,000 back in 1988. And they were really ramping up prices. I mean, the difference between an 86 car and an 89 car was probably like $25,000. Pretty much the same car, but every year they were jacking the price up. And then if you wanted the slant nose option, that was an extra $23,000 on top of that. So if you're looking for a slant, you're looking at about $100,000 minimum to get a slant nose back then. Now the slant noses are probably 20% premium. So all things considered, if you find a 930 and you like it and you want a slant, you need to add 20% or so. And I actually had a chance to buy a slant at one time. Almost get out of this car and get into a slant for nearly the same price. And I probably should have, because I really do like the slants. They're pretty cool. And they only built a few hundred of them, real ones. Now they did a bunch of steel conversions later, aftermarket folks did it. But if you want an original 505 factory option slant, I think they only built 200 or 300. Don't hold me to that number, but it's a really small number. There's probably 5 times that many steel conversions out there. But if you want a real one, they're not easy to find, and especially if you want a slant nose cab or a slant nose Targa. The number of slant nose Targas is maybe 20 or 25. They built hardly any of those. So that's pretty much what's going on in here. You've seen the outside. This is the inside. If you've got any questions about these cars, let me know. Like I said, I've had this car for about 15 years or so. And I probably put 12 or 13,000 miles on it in that time. I've driven it less and less as I've gotten other cars. And then when I got the Cayman, I really started driving it less because that car is so fun and I drive that car every day. I'm always looking for an excuse to drive that car. So in some sense, it's actually been good because it's allowed me to sort of preserve this car, and especially since the prices have gone up on these things so crazy in the last 3 or 4 years. Nothing bad has happened to this car, so it's still in really good shape. I used to concourse it all the time from about 2004 to 2010 or so. So I got all kinds of, trophies and plaques and ribbons and stuff for this car. So I did that and kind of just, after you've done all the events and stuff, there's, everybody... that sort of crowd, it's the same crowd, that shows up for every event. So it's like you've beaten them so many times, they've beaten you so many times. After a while, there's really nothing left to prove. So the only thing I stopped short of was taking this car to the parade, which I'm not going to get underneath this car and clean it with Q-tips. So that's as far as I was going to take it. But it's just a really good car. It's a cool car. This is one of the first supercars, man. Back in the 70s, this thing was like a spaceship. You had the Countach, the mirror ended. So turbocharging was just in its infancy. And when Porsche came out with this was just crazy. The original cars, I think, had 234 horsepower. The 3-liter turbos from 75 to, 77 maybe. They went to 3.3 liters in the late 70s cars, and that's what this is. So we ended up at 282 here in horsepower, and with the modifications I did to it, we're probably at 425, 450, something like that. That's pretty much about as far as you can get with all the bolt-on stuff before you want to start doing open heart surgery to the engine, which I didn't want to do. But this thing will haul the mail, man. You get noticed in this car, that's for sure. And And I hardly ever see these cars out on the road. Now, when I go to car shows, you know, these things are like a dime a dozen. You know, you go to those things and it's like, you see them everywhere. And you kind of get a false sense of appreciation for just how few they are, because then when you're just out driving around the street, I hardly ever see one. I might pass a couple a year. In fact, the Cars and Coffee I just went to over the weekend, there was probably 600 or 700 cars there. Not a single 930, not one. There were a couple later model turbos, but no 930s. And I thought I would have seen a couple, but I know there's a couple around town. I know people who own them, but that you just don't see them that much anymore. And probably even less and less now because they're getting older. So if you've got one, keep it. You know, I spent, you know, I'm still in the black on this car because I bought it in 2003 for like $32,000. And I probably put 35 into it over the years. So I'm probably in the 75, 80 range all in. And these cars are, you know, well into six figures now. So as long as this car is not eating hay and it's not costing me anything, I'm going to keep it. Now, if I need a kidney transplant, this is probably going to be the only one I can sell that will pay for something like that. So it might have to go first, but I'm hoping that's never going to be the case and I'm buried in it. So compared to the other three cars, the E46, the E36, and the Cayman, this obviously has the most panache of all those cars. But compared to the other three cars, this thing drives like a dinosaur. You know, this thing it's old, it's early 70s technology, it's rough, it's loud, it's hot. You don't want to take a long road trip in this thing. This is going to beat you up really bad. In the Cayman, you know, it's got all the creature comforts. You just get in that and go. I've driven that 10, 12 hours at a time. When I drove the E36 back from Florida, no problem. But with this, man, it's just so lewd and crude. You drive it 2 hours, man, or at least I do. I want out. I want out of this thing. It's too much, man. It's just, oh my God. So maybe that's just a sign of my age and getting older, but that's part of the charm of these cars too, you know. And it's more special the less I drive it, because every time I get in it, it just reminds me of why I got the car to begin with back in 2003. It's not supposed to be all things to all people. It certainly isn't to me, but it's a really cool car nonetheless. So that's the Porsche 911 Turbo 930. If you like this video, like it. If you didn't like it, we're not going to see eye to eye on this channel, man, because that's pretty much what we're doing here. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at ChrisWorldTV. And if you haven't subscribed, you never know what's going to come next. It could be anything. Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. Take care.